Hello, I'm Frank from Leeze Boom. Today I'll give you a step-by-step introduction how to set up the Leeze Boom Board Pro. Here we have the packaging. It's best to lay it flat on the floor and then you can open the straps and also the tape. First, put the parts aside. We will need them later. These are the straps, the strap holders, our dots, the EPDM buffers, and the expanding rivets. For now, we'll continue with the parts we need directly. These are the rubber buffer and the corresponding short screws. And for the connection of the front and rear part of the boom board, the longer screws and the nuts. Let's start with the assembly of the plates. You have two completely identical rear plates and two identical front plates. You start with the two back plates and put in the nuts here. Then take a 6mm Allen wrench and two of the long screws to connect the front part to the rear part of the board, preferably lying both together flat on the floor. Before we assemble the board, I will now explain briefly how the bottom side of the board, or the inside part, is made. You can see here a rail where you can move the springs. You can later clamp the springs with the fixing cap, which you can see here, between the two plates. And the spring then can be moved within this rail and later be fixed with the rivets. Now I will show you the spring positions for the positioning of the optional two additional springs. In addition to the movable springs in these rails, you also have the option of positioning additional springs under the board depending on the weight of the driver and the smart trainer. Here at position 1 and here at the front at position 5. In this version it is still called position 5. We will revise our mold a little bit and then this position will also be marked with the number 2. So remember position 1 and position 5 for the additional springs. If I now show you the board again from the upper side, the springs are approximately in this area for rear support, ideally for trainers with backward facing feet, or in the front for trainers who have forward facing feet. And so, in addition to the springs that can be moved in the rails, you have supportive springs in the front and the rear area. We'll now move on to the assembly of the 5 rubber buffers. You take one short screw and mount the rubber buffers by first putting the screw through the board and then holding the screw against it. Then you can easily screw the rubber buffers into the board. Of course, you should tighten the screws later with an Allen key, but this is the easiest way to screw the buffers into the board. We do this for all 5 rubber buffers. Please remember that you must retighten the buffers on both sides with the Allen key. It is best to start with the rear screw and then work your way forward. By this, you assemble the second half of the board to the other half. Tighten the screws with the Allen key. Again, you can apply around 6 to 8 Newton meters. Now the two parts of the boards are connected. As explained in the beginning, you now need the compression springs and one fixing cap for each compression spring. You simply put the cap on here and the compression springs are then placed between the two plates of the board. First, start at the very outside. This is the hardest spring setting. We'll talk a bit more about the spring settings later, but this is the easiest way to mount the springs. On the second side, the spring assembly is a bit more difficult. We recommend holding the bottom plate with your foot. Then you can simply pull up the board with your hand and insert the compression spring between the two plates. When finished, you successfully mounted the first pair of compression springs. With the Boom Board Pro comes a set of EPDM buffers. So if you want to use the board, for example, on tile or wooden floor without a mat or something under it, this is a good way to protect your floor. You should stick these buffers on one side of the board and distribute them evenly so that the board has no chance to touch the floor, and by this it can be prevented to damage the floor. When finished, this side will be facing to the floor. We will now show you as an example the preparation of the board for different smart trainers. Make sure that in general you place the trainer as far back as possible and at the same time as centrally as possible. Now you make sure that the boom dots are mounted under the feet of the trainer if the feet is standing on a hole. So in this case we will need to add a boom dot under the right foot, and the same thing at the left side. There is also a dot needed, and now the trainer is standing on the boom dot. This is another example. Sometimes the foot cannot be seen immediately, but here you will also need the boom dots to help the trainer stand perfectly on the board. Now let's take a look at our 2-point tension system, which you can use to securely attach the trainer. The strap holders are designed so that you can anchor them in the holes of the board. The belt is pulled through here, and to understand how it works, you hook the strap holders into the board, and then you have a securely seated holder. Make sure that the angle of the holder must always point in the direction of the pull. This is the only way to ensure that the holder is properly anchored in the board. If you install the holder in the wrong way around, like this, you have the problem that the holder can easily slip out of the board. So always make sure that the angle of the holder points in the right direction. To prepare the 2-point tension system, you can pull the belt through two holders. As I said, the angles must always point inwards into the direction of pull. When the belt is attached, you can see here the first pair of holders prepared. You can now anchor the holders in the holes of the board over 1 foot of the trainer, anchor it in the board, and then pull it reasonably tight to fix the trainer. Take care that you do not damage the trainer with the metal holder of the strap. This is now the second side of the trainer. The procedure is the same, and please take care that all feet of the trainer are attached properly to the board. This is another example for a different trainer. The procedure is the same. Please again take care that you do not damage the trainer with the metal belt. And please also take care, if the trainer does not have classic feet, that you secure the trainer so that it cannot move in any direction. For some trainers, it might be necessary to use our counterweight. We have now removed both springs to see that the weight is heavily tilted to the left side. Consequently, the board automatically keeps tilting to the left. To compensate this, you can use our counterweight, which you can mount in one of the holes to bring the board back into balance. In addition to the positioning in the holes, you have the possibility to rotate the weight. To give some examples, here the weight is too far to the middle because it's not quite balanced yet. It still tilts to the left. Here in this hole, it's a bit too far to the right because the overall setup tilts to the right. That means we can fine-tune the position by turning the counterweight within the hole and bringing the board back to its balance like this. When you're done with that, the compression springs can be mounted again, and now the setup is finished. Let me show you how to mount our expansion rivets. Just put them into the hole where the cap is, and to remove it, you can just use a flat screwdriver. Be careful when hopping on your bike not to slip. And the last thing I now have to say is enjoy your ride on our boom board.